Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights. I've got 10 negotiating tips for the buyer. Talked about the seller, previous episode, and the buyer. It's not do the opposite or whatever that was, do something different, because as I said, historically in this industry, some people only buy, some people only sell, but the vast majority of people do. They may do more selling than buying or more buying than selling, but a lot of people do both. And so be aware of that. And so it's probably good to have a different posture if you're a buyer, that different side of the table without overhead, or depending on the business situation of the seller, it's not, there's not an equality in the standing sometimes of the party. Without further ado, I didn't thank my sponsors yet. I better do that. Topps Panini and Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Huggins & Scott Auctions, Burbank Sports Cards, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, ComC.com, Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. Frankly, there is negotiation in our industry, and more than half of the sponsors should listen to this. I'm sure they're expert in their fields, but there are a number of things that come up that are not, that are dynamic in this industry that involve some negotiation. Certainly if you're in a card shop, certainly if you're in the auction business, let it be said that everyone would be better served to understand how to be a good negotiator. And as a buyer, you can save some money. So the first suggestion or tip as a buyer in this industry is to be prepared. And I've said this many times in this podcast. I want to help listeners be equipped so that they are not taken advantage of. That's been my mode for more than 40 years now. 44 years. So a long time to help people not get taken advantage of. And being prepared is the first tip, but that preparation is not just knowing about what you're looking for or what you're considering buying, but also understanding what the alternatives are. And there's almost always alternatives. And so even if you're not going to be willing to walk away, which I understand sometimes you're really not going to walk away, you're going to buy it, you've at least got to give that impression that you're willing to walk away, or you'll have no bargaining leverage. Second tip, just obviously related to that, knowledge is power. The more knowledge you have, the more power you're going to have. But the aspect of that is you can't load up your knowledge instantly. You have to walk into it. You have to get that knowledge in advance. You can't just show up and say, I want that card. And then so give me a few minutes to go look up you can, but that's not the knowledge I'm talking about. The historical knowledge of really knowing, for, as a good example, what a particular card was going for pre-COVID. Not just what it was going for last month, but historically, how strong is the basis for a particular card you're interested in. Third tip, don't reveal or disclose your emotional investment in the potential deal. The principle that I've developed over the years is that he who cares the least has the advantage in the argument or in the negotiation, has the upper hand. And a lot of that is subliminal and nonverbal. It's based on perception. Somebody that cares a lot is going to be willing to continue to bend, whereas somebody says, hey, you know what, I can take it or leave it, then the person that cares more is going to keep talking and saying, well, would you take this? If not that, what if I throw in this? And so you're basically negotiating against yourself. Fourth tip, again, based on that emotional stuff, or regardless, if you're the buyer, try to be the one to set the venue, the setting, the timing, the platform, whatever you can set to your advantage. For example, if you can't control your emotions and it's going to be so obvious face to face that you really want this card, then don't do a face-to-face type thing. Make it a digital transaction, or get a friend, an associate, an agent to negotiate for you, who can maybe do some good cop, bad cop situation where, you know, when the seller says, what about this? So you just say, he'll never go for that. You're going to have to do better. My friend really wants the card, but he's not going to overpay. Different dialogue like that. Number 5 is just being willing to be creative. I've made a bad deal, not in the hobby, but in another time, I had a person agree. I was the seller and I gave the price. The person said, yes, I'll take the price. And then I think, great. And then I shook on it and he said, oh, by the way, here are the terms of that price. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm getting my price, but I'm actually not getting my price immediately. There were some other things, other considerations that were negative. And really, when you're creative, sometimes you can use that to your advantage as a buyer, and getting some additional consideration or throw in, or the terms, even that you might be paying the person's price, but paying out over time, or some other thing that in effect gives you a discount. Number 6 was just, and this is, I think, an excellent one, is to appeal to the potential for future business together. You in spite of that, I wanted the other guy to think that he bested me. and that he wanted to do future deals with me back when I was active buying and selling the hobby. That when I was coming up, they weren't thinking, oh, hey, this guy's just trying to get the cheapest deal. They think, well, he wants a good deal, but he's willing to pay fairly. His checks don't bounce. And people like doing business with people that they have a positive experience with. Number 7 is don't play dumb. And I mean that in both senses, in the deaf and dumb sense, as well as the stupidity sense. In other words, playing dumb, it means being stupid, and it also means being too silent, because dumb means not talking. If you're too silent, you're not going to engage the seller. And so establishing some relational dynamic that's warm but not over the top. So I wouldn't be too silent, and I definitely wouldn't play dumb. Oh, I have no idea what this is worth, but I just want to pay a fair price. Better to be honest. Number 8, and I've found this to be true in my other life as well, is that try to be the one that doesn't go first. The concept of anchoring in, if somebody says this is $1,000, the seller says $1,000 is my price. Then if you say, would you take 900? Now you've anchored it. You're never going to get it for less than 900. And now you're between 900 and 1,000. Whereas if you don't go first, if you say, what's your best price? And the seller says, I would never go below 900. Now you're at 900 or potentially below instead of 900 or above. That's the anchoring. So try not to be the one that goes first. Try to be the responder, because you can work down from there. Number 9, don't be a jerk. Don't make an insulting offer. The insulting offers will come back to haunt you. I don't think I've ever made an insulting offer, but that doesn't mean I haven't made a low offer. It doesn't mean I haven't made an offer that was so low that I was pretty sure it wasn't going to be accepted, but it wasn't insulting. And in fact, there's one theory of negotiating that I espouse, is that the first person to make a reasonable offer loses the negotiation, not loses the deal, because you probably do get the deal. But if you made a reasonable offer, the first one to make a reasonable offer usually left money on the table. In other words, could have done better in the negotiation. On the other hand, in a bull market, you want to buy the card if it's going up in value. And number 10, finally, if all else fails, I start pulling cash out of my pocket and I start counting, because in the old days, cash was king. Frankly, I think cash is still king. You can't count $5 bills if it's $1,000 card. You can't count, they better not be 20s either. They've got to be hundreds, like Mr. Mint that we did a tribute to. He was famous for having a stack of hundreds. You start pulling out hundreds. And again, that probably doesn't apply for some of these 6-figure cards, but for hundreds and thousands, if you've got cash out of your pocket, you pull it out. It's amazing how the seller's eyes light up. So just a few tips for negotiating in the hobby. We love the hobby. A lot of fun, a lot of chance for buyers and sellers to make money. And the dance between the buyer and the seller in making the deal is hopefully fun and not toxic or criminal in any respect, if there's any fraud, but there's the enjoyment of trying to get a good deal. So thanks, everybody. Be back again with another episode.